awesome, as the Americans say.
Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with Uohna June Thiessen and Louis D'Souza. Today is Monday, June the 8th, 2020, 4 p.m. New York time, and wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I'm very happy because I have a couple things that I'm celebrating. First of all, I have a new microphone. I got jealous of Louis' microphone because the higher end sound for his was better than mine. I said, I think it's time I look at a new mic. So I kind of found a model similar to the one he's got, and it is better. It sounds better. I did a side-by-side test, so I'm happy with my new microphone.
Very good. Yeah, I know your
an LOA purchase.
It's an LOA purchase. That's right. And then the second thing I'm celebrating, listeners know that I've been working for quite some time on an app for LOA Today. And there was one major issue I was still working on that I couldn't quite get. I'd been working on it for about almost 2 weeks. Well, the good news is I finally figured it out over the weekend. And
awesome.
Louis, like I was just telling you, I had a very unusual reaction, Uohna, when I had the breakthrough, when I discovered what it took to make it work. I thought I was going to feel relief or maybe joy. What I felt was shock. Like, no, that can't be it, can it? Really? I could not believe it was actually functioning the way it was supposed to. I kept pushing the buttons just to keep doing it over and over again.
Well, that's good. That's good. So then after the shock, there came the joy and the celebration, right?
Well, I made it a point to celebrate. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, because you have to, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's really, really important to celebrate breakthroughs. And I actually... You're going to laugh at this, Uohna. I actually startled Louise. See, I told you were going to laugh at it. Because I went in to tell her about it. She was busy doing something, so I waited for her. And then when I got her attention, I threw my arms up in the air and I said, yes! And she practically jumped out of the chair.
Hopefully none of the cats were around because they would have been...
Actually, there was a cat in her lap at the time. Yes.
Oh!
But no animals were harmed in the process of celebrating this wonderful thing. So it worked out.
Talking about animals, had a knock on my door just now, a couple of minutes ago, and opened the door, see the stranger standing there. I say, hi. He says, is this yours? So my wife lost her purse with all of her money and cards and all the rest of it in.
Oh my!
Wow!
And he brought it and handed it to me, and I said, yeah, that's it. And he said, well, I found it on the path, but it looks like it's been chewed up by foxes.
Oh my gosh!
So what happened is foxes came into the house, broke open a backpack, stole the wallet.
Oh my
gosh!
They want to go shopping.
Yes, they did. They wanted to order on Amazon.
But they didn't understand how to use credit cards, so we got it back.
Oh, are you serious? Wow!
I'll show it to you. Hang on.
Oh
that
my gosh.
Is crazy. I mean, foxes are very clever animals, but I never knew that they wanted to go on shopping.
To go shopping.
I mean, that's new.
So if you have a look at the chewed corner there.
Oh my goodness.
But the cards are okay?
All the cards, all the money, everything is exactly as it was left.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Nobody took anything. It was amazing.
That is amazing. Yes.
So many little amazing things happening. It's just unbelievable.
Yes, definitely.
We had 4 of them in our garden last night, all fighting each other. They think our house is home. It's like a second home to them, and we're not encouraging that in any shape or form.
Well, you're high vibe. That's the thing. They recognize high vibration. They know.
Well, my wife is very good gardener, and I don't know if they just like the garden or what, but they are here all the time.
You have fruits and vegetables in the garden? Is that what?
Fruits, vegetables, everything.
Oh, okay. So the girls they're not scared of them?
No, nobody's really scared of them. The only time I'm wary of them is when they're in the house and you trap them in the house so that you block the exit, then they could become dangerous. Otherwise, there's pretty much no chance.
I like how you calmly say when they're in the house. You have to the house, and this is not a big deal.
They are so tame these days. You can almost stroke them. They don't fear humans at all.
Oh wow! Oh my gosh,
That is
that's
crazy.
amazing.
Well, all I can say is you're lucky that the fox has not yet developed the opposable thumb. Otherwise, that money would be gone.
You're just wondering what the foxes would buy, though. Hey?
Yeah, right.
We'll have to wait to find out.
Chunks of meat or lollipops or what? I don't know.
I mean, I'm having
I
this
know,
weird
right?
thought. What if they actually get a hold of your phone and they learn how to use it and they go to Amazon? What do they enter for a delivery address?
It's already entered in there. If he has Prime, they just have to click.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Okay. So shopping
So the
foxes.
address will be Foxley Woods next to us.
Foxley Woods. There you go.
Hole number 3.
Oh, that's funny. Good stuff. So, yeah, well, all's well that ends well. You got the money and the cards back, and the fox had a
Yeah,
good
that's
time,
great because it's a hassle to have to renew all that and
Oh,
cancel everything
yeah.
and all that stuff.
Well, she ordered a new wallet already, so that was good because this one's torn to pieces.
Right.
So, everything just seems to have worked out. And,
Yeah.
I got a few stories that we went to. Do you have Ikea over there?
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So with coronavirus, there's long queues outside and blah, blah, blah. But we just slipped straight in. We had something to return. We managed to slip straight in. And then when we were looking at this long queue to get out, this lady said, "Oh, if you've got smaller items, you can come pay here." Right next to us, right there, the first one. We paid and we went out a little back entrance and we were in the car. It's like, wow, this could have taken 3 hours and we're in and out,
Awesome.
If not that, something better. If not that, something better.
Yes, definitely.
And there's about 4 other stories I've got this week, just trying to remember them all. It's just, you really, when you're in the zone and when you're feeling good and when you're knowing things are working for you, it's so fun watching them happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, that's true. Yeah. The hard thing is just remembering to, write them down. So
It's
Yeah.
true. The whole thing that I'm finding fascinating is allowing myself every day to believe that anything is possible. That stuff that I'm not thinking in the past, I'm not focusing what is, I'm focusing on what could be. And that is what is changing everything. It's really amazing. Really loving that.
That's the challenge. That really is the challenge. The more
It
that you
is.
can
It is
focus
a
on
big
that,
challenge.
it takes a lot of practice to do that
Yeah.
regularly.
Mhm.
But
It takes
can be done.
very clear understanding of the law of attraction and the bigger picture of the law of attraction, the Abraham Hicks teaching of all the different components.
Mhm.
And then to the degree that you are living it, and I find the great benefit in teaching it, because when you teach it, you have to know it well. So,
Absolutely, yeah. You teaching it helps to really cement the concepts into your mind. I've had those
Absolutely.
experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a way of taking a test without taking a test.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you have to explain to somebody else, and if you don't have it right, forget it. They aren't going to get it.
Yeah, I read something where they said that you remember, I think, less than 50% of what you read, and there's another.
wow, that's a high
thing.
percentage.
I know, depending on how but you remember something like 98% of what you teach. So yeah.
Okay.
And Richard Bach Illusions, you teach best what you most need to learn.
That's
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one
Yes,
of my favorite
indeed.
books.
And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy preparing for the shows, doing all the research and stuff, because
Mhm.
I think the person that's helped the most by all this is me. So
Sure,
I really
yeah.
enjoy that. Yeah.
Well, that's been my philosophy from the beginning. I've always done this to help me primarily, and thank goodness other people get help from it too. But
Right.
this
You
is
narcissist, you.
I am. Oh, I'm so narcissistic. Except that
Yeah.
perhaps I do care about somebody else, so I guess not completely narcissistic, but mostly
And why do you care about her? Because
because I care about people. That's all. I like people.
Because it makes you feel better. You narcissist.
It is true. It's true. I say that proudly. I do feel
Absolutely. I wish people understood that concept. I really do.
It's a wonderful thing. It's a
No,
fabulous.
everybody's a
actually
narcissist. What a shock.
ties in line with what the topic was supposed to be today.
Ah, okay.
What do you mean
Yes.
supposed to be? We've been talking about it all along by the sounds of what you're saying.
Well, on the periphery, yes.
Well, that sounds like an appropriate segue. So why don't you introduce the topic
Absolutely.
and everybody can share.
Yes. So I spent this week, researching compassion. And compassion in the law of attraction, the neuroscience of compassion, compassion in Buddhism, because it's one of the religions that emphasize compassion more than any other, I think. And so for them, it's a major part of their practice, and they've always been, have a strong focus on compassion, so much so that when neuroscientists want to study the effect of compassion on the brain, they usually use Buddhist priests who, they have a practice, a meditation practice called compassion, or sometimes referred to in the Western world as loving kindness meditation. So it's a huge part of, how they practice their way of life, essentially.
That's an important thing you just said there, I think, that the equivalent in Western culture would be, would you say loving kindness?
Loving kindness, yes.
Yeah, loving kindness, which is a different meaning from what the origins of compassion originally were. Because the origin, I actually did a lookup on it, the origin of the word is suffer with.
Right.
Which is not really the same thing as loving.
See, so what happens is the Buddhists have a practice, and they have a practice. It's called by some name. They have a name for it. And so when the Westerners discovered it, they thought, that sounds like compassion. And
yes, it will call it that,
compassion.
Right?
And then they said, maybe it's not quite compassion. So they now call it loving kindness. But the Buddhists know exactly what they're doing.
Oh, I'm not doubting that at all. I just think it's an important distinction because, I'm always interested in high vibe stuff, and love is definitely high vibe. So for me, I like that. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and tying in with what Louis was talking about, the whole practice of compassion and loving kindness, actually, one of the reasons why LOA practitioners talk about it is because it makes you feel good. It puts you in that high vibration state. And so it's something that you want to do more, which is why the Buddhists have an actual deliberate practice. I mean, they spend hours engaging in this mental exercise of loving kindness and compassion, where they think about other people that they know and love and care about, and experience and feel those emotions, and then they try to expand that out to people that they may not know, or people they know, but for those who are not as, how should I say, it's not as practiced, they to think about their enemies, if you want to call it that, or the people that they might have a difficult relationship with, and try to practice loving kindness, and then try to make that circle as wide as possible, and eventually to incorporate the entire world in their practice. So it's really good. And then, of course,
it reminds me of something. It reminds me of something that I saw. I don't remember where exactly, but somewhere on Facebook, one of the LOA groups, somebody had posted something to the effect, how do you manifest when you're feeling depressed or anxious? When you're dealing with anxiety? And my response is, well, I don't. I try to make myself feel better first. And compassion, gratitude or appreciation, any of the various higher vibe places that you can focus your attention on to get to that better feeling place is the thing I try to do first, and then I focus on what it is that I want. Because if I try to manifest from a place of depression, forget it. It's not going to work. But if you focus from a place of loving kindness, that's a really high vibe. That's going to give you some good results when you do that.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is that it actually causes changes in your brain. The actual physical structure of your brain changes. These Buddhist priests, their brains are different, wired differently, such that it becomes not just something that you do at a moment in time, but it also becomes a state of being, and how you you interact with the world on a regular basis. So whatever situation or person they may encounter, their first response is that loving kindness, regardless of who it is or what the situation is. So it's really something admirable to strive for. So because with LOA, it's all about recognizing that we are all expressions of source energy. And so loving kindness or compassion is a way for us to dissolve this idea of separate selves and individuals, and to connect with source energy through connecting with other people, and help us to the Buddhists believe it help us to achieve higher consciousness, better insight, more understanding, and elevated awareness. All of that is part of the practice of compassion. So
which matches what we know about LOA as it's taught by LOA teachers, because they're talking about getting to that high vibration space. It's the same feeling. It's the same thought.
And this is definitely one of the ways to do that. So it's really cool.
It is cool. Yeah. What I need to ask you though, what got you onto this topic? Because I mean, anytime you come up with a topic, you always text it to us over the weekend, and I say to myself, "Wow, I wonder where that one came from. Where did this one come from?"
I'm surprised that you ask. It's kind of obvious with what's happening in our world. I thought that the best response right now is one of compassion.
Okay.
Because one of the things that when it comes to the science of compassion, this is outside of LOA and Buddhism, the neuroscientists, what they have finding is that compassion, of course, helps to upregulate your positive feelings, right? You're happier, your well-being improves, your brain functions better, not to mention, all the other health benefits, like your blood pressure goes down. And one of the interesting things that they found is that a practice of compassion actually extends the telomeres. And
the what?
The telomeres are these kinds of knobs. If you think about your shoelace and it has like a knob at the end.
Yeah.
So all of the DNA, the chromosomes in your cells, they have these strands of DNA, and at the ends are the telomeres. Huh. And as you age, the telomeres get shorter and shorter, and eventually, when you have no more telomeres, you die. So it's connected to longevity, and compassion actually lengthens your telomeres or preserves them from getting shorter, which is very fascinating. So there's so many benefits to practicing compassion. Of course, it improves your sense of connectedness with other people, social connectedness. And of course, now social scientists and psychologists are coming to the understanding that is the most important marker for health.
I believe it.
And so compassion helps you be better at that. But the thing, what they're realizing, and this was really interesting, I saw this guy gave a talk, and he was saying that when you practice compassion, it's different from empathy and sympathy, because sympathy is being able to recognize somebody else's distressing emotion. Mm-hmm. And empathy is actually feeling that emotion. And but compassion is those two combined, but in addition, you are moved to help, to do something, to act, to actually make a difference, And what he's saying that with compassion, you are operating from this space where you recognize that, yes, there are these things that these people are doing. They're taking certain action, they have certain behavior, but at the core of that, there's an emotional need. Mm-hmm. And so when your practice of compassion is such that you are able to look beyond the person's actions and actually try to address the need. And even if you may not be aware of what the need is, you're more inclined to, instead of saying, well, you shouldn't do that, you should stop doing that, you shouldn't act like that, this is not going to help, you should really stop doing this. You should, the question then becomes, how can I help you? What do you need? How can I help make this better? And so that's where, the true practice of compassion comes from. And then when you do that, it helps the other person, it helps yourself, it helps the whole, experience, because a lot of times it's really not about doing anything, but it's more about somebody else needs being acknowledged. And that's simply what it is. So, I was thinking about the current situation, with all the protesting and all the Black Lives Matter. And, I think there's a need for all of us to exercise more compassion instead of, simply criticizing and judging and trying to determine what actions should and shouldn't be done, instead of trying to get to the core of the issue and decide, how can I help in the situation?
I think there's also something to be said for the idea that if you're coming from a position of compassion, which we're defining as loving kindness, coming from a high vibration state. And when you're coming to help from a high vibration state, you're going to be more helpful just because you're at a high vibration state.
Right.
Just that alone. So, yes, certainly it's good to ask, how can I help, and all that kind of thing. But just the fact that you're there, just the fact that you're putting out high vibe, means that the person you're wanting to help is going to be able, if they're receptive to it. They also have to be receptive. It's a two-way street. But if they're receptive to it, they're going to have more to grab onto, so to speak. They're going to have more that they can latch onto. And that's the beauty of high vibe energy. It transfers very well.
Yes. And I agree. But and this is my personal opinion, I feel like just yes, your presence is important, and the high vibration makes a huge difference from where you're coming from. But asking that question, or a similar question, it actually it creates a space that wouldn't be there otherwise, if you know what I mean.
Which question are we referring to? I'm not sure.
Oh, how can I help? Or how can I help? Oh, okay. Or the many forms of that question. and it doesn't even have to be you asking the person. You could also be asking yourself, right? So it could be an exercise of introspection and contemplation. So you then ask, how can I help? And that could lead to, some amazing discoveries in terms of how you can make a difference. So, yeah.
Josie is as often is the case, she is sharing wildly in the live
Josie, Josephine.
And she's sharing quite a bit about the work of Garyzhukov. Are you familiar with Zhukov?
Yes, I'm familiar with Garyzhukov. Yes, the seat of the soul and conscious relationships and all that. Yeah.
Okay. And she's drawing a parallel between what we're talking about here and what Zhukov has to say. In one particular case, she quotes, the difference between a compassionate action and a fearful action is intention. Individuals who are pursuing external power are not interested in their intentions. They do not discriminate between intentions that they think they hold, hidden intentions that they may or may not realize they hold, and the real beneath everything else.
Yes, I agree 100%. Because that's one of the other things that's a part of the Buddhist practice of compassion. They spend a lot of time contemplating or reflecting on their own biases and personal opinions that may be coloring their opinion of someone else's behavior, right? So before they actually engage in helping physically or literally, they spend time trying to see themselves and see how they may or may not have contributed, or how their attitudes may or may not make things worse, or they really kind of spend time looking at themselves first before, because like you alluded to, you have to make sure that you are coming from that place of high energy first and foremost. Otherwise, even if your actions are great and positive, if they're not coming from a high energy place,
the results are not often very nice.
yeah, exactly. Right.
They're actually quite unpleasant in many situations.
Yeah, definitely. So
that's true. Yeah, so when we stay in that high vibe place, it's definitely a better thing.
Yeah.
Louis is uncharacteristically quiet.
I know.
I think it's because you and I are kind of dominating things. So I'm going to just turn the mic over a little bit and see what
Okay.
kind of thoughts are you thinking about, Louis?
I'm just practicing compassion.
Love it.
I love it. Yes, indeed. Yes, yes. Yes.
You can talk all day.
The Buddha would approve.
The Buddha would, yes.
Yes, 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 yes.
I have a question. Josephine says for Uohna and Louis. Have either of you ever researched the related to practice of wisdom by indigenous people? So I don't know if this is considered research. So I was, as a kid, creating a hiking trail, and to that end, I was allowed to go pick up some prisoners and take them out into the bush, and they helped me make the trail. And then I took them back in the evenings with a Land Rover, and I was just a young kid of about 18. But one of the guys that always wanted to come with me was a native witch doctor, a Sangoma, and he was fascinating because he used to go and dig up roots and herbs and all the rest of it, and different branches and trees and leaves and all the rest of it. And he'd have a whole bundle he'd take back to the prison with him afterwards. And then one day I was cutting away at some branch for the trail, and it came back and it hit me in the head over here, and it left a huge gash in my head. Ouch. Where it cut it open. So what he did was he went around, he looked around for a bit, he found a tree, he cut off a branch, then he cut the tree in half, the branch in half. He opened up the branch, he scraped out the different bits and pieces of the inner part of the branch, and he put it on my wound, and it sucked up all the pain. There was a bit of poison that I could feel there as well. It sucked everything up, closed the wound, and I've got no hint of it anymore.
Wow.
And it was quite a deep, harsh gash. And, I continued the rest of the day, creating the trail, going home, and my dad said, "What was this? What happened?" And I told him, and he said, "Oh, which tree? Because he was a botanical guy, and he knew the name of every tree, and it was the wild apple tree, which he had taken a branch of it, cut it open, and interestingly enough, when he had scraped out that inside, it was gauze-like, and it was almost like you get a bandage." Would be gauze-like, yeah. So it allowed it to breathe, but also had the goodness, which was helped with the healing, and
right, as well as the skin come back together.
After that, I started asking, "What's this for? What's that for?" And I don't know if that answers your question, Josephine, but yeah, that is my little bit of trying to understand the indigenous wisdom of the African people. Yeah.
Well, it's a cool example of it, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, my grandmother did some of that, some of those practices, which I shunned when I was a child, and much to my chagrin right now.
You mentioned that last week.
Yeah, but it ties in kind of like what I was talking about just now with the Buddhists, right? And so there are the Native Americans, as well as other Native people who have that sense of that we're all connected to each other in some way. And when I was looking at the compassion thing, it was one of the things it said is that there are no givers or receivers. And in other words, whatever you do to someone, you're really doing it to yourself, because we're all one, connected. So when you give, you're actually receiving, and when you receive, you're actually giving, kind of thing. And it ties in with when they practice compassion. One of the things they do is they envision, for example, if somebody has a particular wound or some physical ailment, they either envision the person being healed, or they will actually take on the ailment visually to themselves and heal themselves, because they recognize that it's connected. And what's fascinating, this is going off on another tangent, but
that's all right. We do tangents all the time. Not a big deal.
there is this group of neurons that we all have in our brains called the mirror neurons. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this. And these mirror neurons, they get activated when we see someone do something. And what it does is it then triggers our motor neurons to copy that action. And it doesn't just activate motor neurons, it also activates sensory neurons. So when you see someone getting, pricked or cut or whatever, the very same neurons that would have been activated in you are activated to an extent, because that whole cycle, that process is modulated by the frontal lobe. And what they found is that the Buddhists in their practice, they're able to activate and copy and simulate the suffering of other people without taking on the negative aspects. They do that in order to gain insight and understanding. And so
to play with contrast.
Right. So the more they're able to go there and not be involved in, caught up in it, the better they are at knowing how to respond and all. And so we all have these mirror neurons in our brain. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't have the frontal lobe modulation that is required. So we can sympathize and we can empathize. And so sometimes that feels uncomfortable and painful, and we shun it and we don't want to go near it and we want to have nothing to do with it, as opposed to being able to modulate it such that it does give us insight and compassion, so that we can then reach out. Because one of the things that the mirror neurons do is that it helps us to see the world from other people's point of view, essentially.
It's interesting. While you were saying that, I was reflecting back to last week, one of the shows, I don't remember which one, but one of my wonderful co-hosts, I think it may have been Dan Mangina, but I'm not 100% sure. One of my co-hosts said that wisdom is where you have a response that in other circumstances could have been negative, but because there's no charge attached to it anymore, you don't have
right. Yes. I'm familiar with that quote. Wisdom is having the emotional response, but without the charge or something to that effect. Yes. And so because in fact, Buddhism, the two most important tenets of Buddhism, the two pillars of the faith, are compassion and wisdom. And they believe that they go hand in hand, because they believe that compassion gives you wisdom, and then wisdom gives you more compassion. And it's kind of like this evolving circle of increased awareness and enlightenment and higher consciousness. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah. And it points to how the process works on a day-to-day basis, which I think is where the great value is. Because I mean, it's all great to talk about theory, but unless you can practice it, you're dead in the water. You're not getting anywhere.
Yes.
You gotta be able to put it into action.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons why I have no time for politics. And that is because I completely understand each person's perspective. And I say, yeah, you're right from that perspective. Yeah, you're right from that perspective. And where do you go from there? You just say everybody's right, and you just carry on with your own life and do the things you want to move forward,
But I think that we have a responsibility to some extent, not to get caught up in politics, certainly not, but to make sure that our attitudes and actions and even words are not reinforcing some of these systems that are harmful and dangerous to our fellow men.
I would disagree with you, and I disagree with you from a law of attraction point of view. There is no insertion in an attraction-based universe.
There is no what?
Assertion in an attraction-based universe.
And what does that mean?
That means that everybody who feels attacked, threatened, uncomfortable with what anybody else is saying or doing, it's their problem.
Well, I disagree with that wholeheartedly, but
That's fine.
that's why we're here. Because I think that one of the reasons why we manifested into this physical being is to, to learn, to grow, to help, to show compassion. And those situations where people are being oppressed or hurt, those are the opportunities for us to practice this compassion that we are, that we consider something good and positive, a higher frequency, a higher vibe. We wouldn't have to practice compassion if there were none of these situations existing.
So you've been talking about the idea of a Buddhist who will take on board this negative experience and be able to sit there with a neutral thing and not experience any negative feelings and experiences towards the whole thing. So basically, it's an Abraham Hicks perspective, which is saying, if you want to help somebody, maintain your own high vibration. Do not come down to their level, because when you come down to the level, you're useless and powerless. So
right.
Once you understand that nothing's ever going wrong for anybody ever.
I don't agree with that. That doesn't, I'm not saying that you have to go, dissolve into somebody else's pain or suffering. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, the Buddhists, that's not what they do, because that's why they practice this deliberately. I mean, on a daily basis, they spend hours doing this so that they can take on these feelings to understand it and then be compelled to act and to do whatever they can, or find whatever ways they can help to improve the situation, whatever that is. It doesn't mean that you become associated with or identified with those feelings. No, on the contrary, you recognize that fellow human beings who are also expressions of source energy are having a particular experience, and it provides you an opportunity to exercise, to practice, to demonstrate, to feel, to show compassion, loving kindness, concern, care. That's what I'm saying. So it's not about you taking on that. And in fact, when you understand that you can, recognize and feel the emotion without, being caught up in it in terms of your own energy going down with them, that's not what I'm saying at all.
You don't want to offend the microphone, by the way.
I know. Yes, I have to be compassionate to myself.
So I'm not purporting that you do not have any action. What I'm purporting is that the action you do have comes from a place of alignment.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
And when you acting from that perspective, you are not necessarily thinking or perceiving anybody as broken, anybody as having an experience that has any other reason for being there other than to help. Yes,
and it's maybe there for them to help, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can't help. That doesn't mean
you
that
can help, as I say, but only from an alignment perspective if you really want to be of any benefit.
Yes, and that's what Walt said, earlier on, from that high vibrational place. That's important. That's critical. But at the same time,
but again, I've really noticed that I don't see anybody broken anymore. I don't see anybody who is not in a position or not being given the perfect situation for them to help them expand with.
Mm-hmm. And you can definitely see that, but that doesn't exclude your being able to contribute or make some kind of positive contribution. I mean, you're a coach, you help coach people. That's part of helping. So I'm not sure what the issue
Yeah,
is.
I mean, we're both saying the same thing from a slightly different perspective. And I don't mind helping people, but only when I feel it's right. And I'm very clear about that now. I don't ever try never to see anybody broken. Actually, it's almost difficult for me to see anybody in any circumstance to be broken. To
Yes.
see a nation, a country, a race, a tribe, who's going through a specific problem at any moment in time. I just see that as a beautiful experience to help them expand. And it's a very different perspective than it is to say, oh, it's terrible and it's wrong and it's bad and that's all the rest of it, to saying, oh my gosh, look at this beautiful gift that they're giving themselves so that they can help them grow and understand and see clear and have more compassion.
Yes, well, if even if that means you helping them see that, you're still helping. The point is
No, I
that
can't help them see that. They may look at me and see, hey, he's compassionate and I might want to be like that, but I can't make
I
anybody
didn't
do
say
anything.
make. I didn't say make.
Okay.
I say help.
Okay.
And the point
I
is
can't see the
that
difference.
yes,
There is a
one is
difference.
completely compelling someone, and one is actually showing them the way. It's two different things.
Okay, I can see somebody helping in a way that is compelling, but yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The point is that that's one of the tenets of compassion as far as the Buddhists are concerned, because their idea is that it's easy for us to sit here and determine and judge whether this is something that they need help with or they don't need help with, or they can benefit from, or they can, it's their own calling, or whatever. But when you take the time to stop and do the introspection, then you might be open to a different perspective, right? So right now your perspective is whatever's happening to them, that's what they attracted or called or wanted or desired or whatever. But there might be a different perspective to the whole thing. The possibility exists, right? That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
And
But
so
what is that possibility from your perspective?
you know what the possibility is? I have learned so much how important compassion is. And now I see opportunities everywhere to actually practice this compassion. So that's my perspective.
Absolutely. That's the
Yeah.
law of attraction. When you
Yes.
focus
And
on something,
so,
it'll draw more to you.
right. And so when I see people that are acting or in a certain way or doing certain things, I stop to think more in terms of what is it that they need, as opposed to why they're acting that way, and how can I help that situation. Just like when I may be in need of whatever, I would like for someone else to actually, a fellow human being, to reach out, extend their hand of compassion to me. And so I do the same. As I said, no giver, no receiver. What you do to them, you do to yourself, right? Because when you show compassion to others, you're also actually showing compassion to yourself. So that's
Can you
how
show others compassion if you haven't first understood, become compassion yourself?
No, and that's why you practice it, right? That's why you engage.
So you mentioned you feel better when you give them compassion. I would say first make sure that you're in a place of compassion,
Absolutely.
then offer it, and then you might get that ripple effect coming back that you feel more compassion and so and so
I
and so
agree
forth.
100%. That's what the practice is all about, you
So
having
Jeff says,
compassion for yourself, having compassion for others, and then the cycle continues.
so Jeff says that the Buddhist principle is you can't change the world, you can only change yourself.
I agree. And that's why they, sometimes, like I said, they take on some of these sufferings on themselves, because they realize that sometimes these manifestations that they see in others might be actually a reflection of some of their own inner shortcomings or whatever that needs healing. So, yeah.
That's an interesting point that you just touched on there, though, the idea that they take on the sufferings of others. Because as I understand, I don't claim to be an expert at Buddhism, don't get me wrong on this, but I have looked into it a little bit. And as I understand it, while they refer to suffering quite extensively, when you look at what practitioners, regular practitioners of Buddhism actually experience, they really don't experience suffering.
No, right. They
which
don't.
is a really interesting distinction.
Yes.
In other words, so it's almost like we need a better phrase. It isn't so much they take on the suffering because they don't actually experience the
Right.
suffering.
Right.
It's
Yes.
more like they connect to the suffering without it actually having any effect on them. Is
Right.
that a
That's
way of
the
putting it?
challenge of the English language,
Yeah, no
trying
kidding.
to explain all this. But yeah, it's even difficult for the people who study it. And I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
think
sure. Can we
I
please
know,
have
'cause
some clear English here? Thank you very much.
right, because even the Buddhists themselves, they, it's so much a part of their practice that they trying to explain it to someone else who doesn't
Right.
practice. It's challenging. So yes, it is. It is.
There's something called, and you may know it, Uohna, is chitta. There's 5 passions or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a chitta, but there was one that talks about perceiving beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm surrounded by a lot of individuals young male type, who perceive beauty more in a sexual way rather than as just pure beauty.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I see some people who are not able to look at a girl who's underage and perceive their beauty because they're underage,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's quite interesting that people in our language in without Buddhism are not taught to understand that
Right.
that kind of beauty.
Yeah.
When you can perceive that inner beauty at any age, sex,
Yes.
race, nation,
Yeah.
you name it. And I really like different aspects of the Buddhist philosophy. Definitely, it's
Yeah,
quite
'cause
amazing.
one of the things that they do in their meditation practice is to try and understand their own issues. So relating to what you're saying, people who aren't able to perceive the innocent beauty of a child or a girl, regardless, there's this whole societal, um, I don't know how to describe it, norms, value system, whatever you call it, that
Tribal value system sounds good. Yeah.
That kind of just clouds your perception of
Your
things
vision. Yeah.
and life, and so you're unable to kind of reach beyond that and see things. And so that's one of the reasons why they part of their compassion is practice is looking at themselves and looking at their issues. And it goes back to with what the neuroscientists are discovering, right? So when we have these mirror neurons that allows us to put ourselves in other people's place and see the world from their viewpoint, because it gives us a completely different perspective sometimes, because I've lived as me all my life. And so that's how I've experienced the world. But everybody else has had a different experience. Yes, I may have similarities with, the people who come from my village and my country, and similarities with Black people and women and all that kind of stuff. You have things in common, but you still have a very unique perspective. And sometimes it becomes very difficult, more so for some people than others, to really stop and take on the point of view of someone else. It is actually really challenging, but it is a very enlightening practice, and something that it is considered extremely important to enlightenment.
That's another really interesting point you're raising there. And the reason I say this is, you can check my brother on this, because obviously we had the same experience with the same father.
Right.
Our dad, from a very early age, taught us, and he taught it to us as if it were a Native American concept. I'm not sure if it actually is, but that's the way he taught it to us. The idea of always look at the world from the perspective of others. The cliche phrase is walk a mile in someone else's moccasins. And that phrase...
So Marcus going like, oh, I remember something like that.
It obviously made a big impression on him.
I know, right? He said the moccasin phrase triggered something. That's all he remembers.
Well, that was the one that Dad would repeat over and over again.
Okay, yeah. So he does have a very faint memory, but I don't think he thought about it consciously.
The whole phrase was something like, before you criticize somebody, walk a mile in his moccasins.
Yes, I am familiar with that expression. Yes.
You are, okay. So we're not completely
Yeah.
we actually have some relevance for today. That's a good thing.
Right, definitely. Oh yeah, that's very relevant. Yes.
But we got that very early on, and I don't think it ever really occurred to me that that was an exception. I think I kind of figured everybody experienced that. But when you were talking just now, I realized they probably didn't get what we
Right.
got,
That's true.
you know?
You're right.
Because for me, it's second nature now. I have, for all of my life, and Mark may not remember the phrasing, but he certainly, models the behavior. All of our lives, we have constantly been looking at things from everyone's perspective.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it can actually be confusing until you finally get a sense of who you are and develop your self-confidence and so forth.
Right.
But it's also, like you say, it's very enlightening to
Yeah.
think about, okay, so what's this person experiencing as they're doing X, and what's that person doing as they're experiencing Y, and I'm interacting with this person, I'm getting this kind of response. I wonder what's going through their mind that makes them think that.
Yes.
Whereas this person's giving me a completely different response, and they're even hostile about it. Like, whoa, well, geez, I wonder what's going through their mind. And
Right.
it's just like this ongoing thing that's just part of my psyche now.
Yeah.
So I'm saying,
in fact, there's a phrase that's familiar in psychology called theory of mind, and it refers to the ability to assess people's mental state, emotion based on what they're doing. So you see how they're acting, and you are able to look beyond that to understand or more like, okay, what's going on? What are they feeling? Because you can't see that necessarily, or they're not telling you. And so and this is something that they talk about in terms of children are unable to do that until up to a certain age, because at certain age, they're very much, they think they are the whole world kind of thing. And then it extends to, they identify with their mother. And then it starts, they start making that distinction between them and the mother. And then eventually between them and other people, where they're like looking at other people's action and maybe trying to figure out, okay, what's happening. And that comes with, certain brain development. But theory of mind is something that is, it's a huge area of psychology, because a lot of people are understanding that certain, like people like criminals and other people with mental disorders aren't able to do that. They aren't able to actually exercise that kind of theory of mind. And so it causes them to, first of all, not understand people's pain and suffering, and then they are inflicted. And then they don't understand why people do certain things they do. It's, the world is very confusing for them in that sense.
Well, yeah, until you truly understand how to differentiate between yourself and others, it becomes almost impossible to navigate. You have to have that differentiation, and that develops over time, of course, as you develop your selfhood and your confidence and all that. But until that happens, it can be very confusing.
Yeah.
I'm kind of sitting here in shock over the idea that most people don't learn that. Maybe it's true. Maybe they don't. I have a feeling, though, that people do learn it, at least on a subconscious level. They may not be aware of it, but I think people do.
So here's the thing: I think a lot of us know it in theory. That option exists, and here's the thing, right? You can do that if someone actually charges you to do that. So like if you in school, I don't know if you guys did this, but we had debate teams, and you were assigned a side of the debate question, right? Pro or con.
Every other school did that except ours. We didn't do that.
Yeah, right. And sometimes you had to prepare both sides, because you never know what they're going to call you to defend. So there was always that you had to have the whole picture. You have to have both sides. So people can do that when they're charged or someone asks. But when it comes to sometimes emotional situations, that's where the challenge becomes. That's where challenging. So, in all relationships, parent, child, husband, wife, employer, employee, protesters and non-protesters, people are so emotionally charged. The part of the brain that allows them to see both sides is shut down. And so they only can see their perspective and their viewpoint, and that's the only right one, and everybody else is wrong if it's not in alignment, essentially.
One thing I watched change with me over the years is I was very much against, in every shape and form, emotional conflict. I used to run a mile, and that's an understatement of the year. And over the years, as I come to understand myself more, I actually quite enjoy emotional conflict. I really able to understand what it is, where it is, and to be so centered that I can deal with it with ease. And it's really a nice place to be, because people do throw emotional conflict at you now and again. I was thrown a curveball the other day, and I was like, wow, that hit me. And I could have come back with this and this and this. So, obviously you can still be affected here and there, but it's really a fun thing. But I wanted to talk about something else quickly. Talking about compassion we have today. Now, one of the most compassionate people I've ever met was somebody I called my mentor. I don't think I've ever called this to her face. So that's what a true mentor is, somebody who doesn't need the title or want it or whatever. And so I was a searcher. I didn't have anybody who really understood me, and I was in a shop that I really liked. It was a what do you call those shops that sell herbs and pills and
natural foods?
Yeah, those kind of shops. So, I really liked the girl there, so I used to go there quite often, chat to Quanta. And then I said to Quanta one day, and I said to her, I really would love to learn reflexology. So behind me, this lady says, well, I'll teach you. It's like, what? Who are you?
Asking it is given.
So she said, here's my name and number. Come around and I'll give you a few treatments, and I'll chat about it. So I was stunned by this. I've got her name and number here, and I was like, what do I do with this? And then, do I take it seriously, or, what do I think, or what do I not think? And then, months went by, and I was like, I've got to get to her. And then I phone her up, I make an appointment, I get on my bicycle, and I'm cycling to her, and I get a puncture halfway there. So then I'm like, am I supposed to go? Am I not supposed to go? What's the universe trying to tell me? And then eventually I said, I'm definitely going to go. I phoned her up. I said, I can't make it today. I've had a puncture halfway there. I'm not going to carry because, she lived a long way away. Let's reschedule. We rescheduled. But then I had to postpone for about another 2 months. And I just couldn't believe it. What's going on here? But I had this inner determination that I was going to get there. So eventually made an appointment. I took an extra tire tube with me. I took my pump with me. I took all my kit with me for punctures, and I left 2 hours early and arrived 2 hours early. So I sat in the park for 2 hours. Then I go inside, and there she sits, and she massages my feet, and we have a good chat. And she says, well, when can you come back if you want to come back? And I said, well, I can come back in a couple of days' time. She said, okay. And then I started going to once or twice a week, every week for years and years and years and years. She had a whole bookshelf of books, and she had so much compassion that I gave her full permission on my own way and my own level to teach me. So literally when I went to her, it was like getting slapped around naked, hung on the wall. And that's what I felt like as she slowly chiseled away all my walls that I'd built up to protect myself against being this weird kid that nobody understood. So, when I was cycling to her after a while, I was literally on full compassion and love and a feeling of absolute, I was floated on that bicycle all the way to her and back. It was no just no more punctures, no more nothing. But for an example of somebody who, when that relationship happens between two people where one submits to the other so that they can learn and grow, it is one of the most beautiful experiences you can ever have.
Yeah, I wanted, as Louis was talking, it occurred to me that, this lady showed compassion to you. She could have said, you know what, whatever problems you have, you need, and so you're going to stay with it. And I'm thinking about doctors and therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists who are, it's their profession to help, and some of them are LOA practitioners in their, and so they're recognizing the need. They have the gift or the training or the qualifications to help, and it's the same with all of us. We can help in our own way, so we don't have to say that these people, whatever they're going through is there for whatever reason. And whether we say that or not, that's not the issue. The point is that there's always, the world is filled with opportunities to help. That's why we manifested into this physical universe, so that we can be of help, we can receive help, and we can just make that cycle of high vibration frequency go around, and so there are going to be opportunities that are going to present themselves to us almost on a daily basis, that we can choose to either take advantage of, or we can choose to ignore. But the point is that compassion is something that is I think so beneficial to all of us. And so when we see suffering and oppression and whatever else, those are the opportunities to incorporate compassion in our practice.
Speaking of helping, I want to remind people that that's one of the reasons why we do the show 5 days a week. So here's my segue to doing the promo that says,
yes, we're over.
Please become a subscriber. And there's just going to be news in the next few days about how you can also get the app. Yes, it is about to come. It's not quite here. A few little things have to be fixed, but the major issues have been resolved. So it's coming very, very shortly. But in the meantime, be a subscriber, because, well, first of all, that's how you'll find out when the app is available. And second of all, it's a great way to get help every day and to give some help too, because every person who's listening is also part of the conversation. Some people actually become part of the live stream and they participate that way. But all of us are participating in helping ourselves and others just by focusing on these types of things. So become a subscriber. Go to the homepage of the website, loatoday.net. Also check us out on YouTube. Subscribe there as well. Just look for LOA Today podcast videos and follow along. Join the community of people who are trying to make this a better place by raising everybody's vibration. Everybody gets to a better place. And when we do that, everybody benefits. Isn't that right?
Yep, absolutely.
So it's good stuff. So thank you guys. Good discussion. Really good.
Yes, absolutely. I enjoyed preparing for it and talking about it.
As you usually do. You usually do. Thanks, live streamers, too, for your contributions, Jeffrey and Josie. Jeffrey, I didn't really mention Jeffrey, but Jeffrey was going off on a rampage of appreciation there. I mean,
well, you know what? I should add that this topic was actually motivated in some small way by what Jeffrey asked last week, because the last question he asked was, how can I help?
Okay. So there you go, Jeffrey. You played a role both. And Jeffrey also had the word you were looking for, Louis. It was apothecary.
Apothecary. Right. Now we've learned something in this story.
Well, actually, I've just thought of the word we used, health food shop.
Health food shop. Okay, well. English is a multi-valued language. There's all kinds of ways to express it.
I like apothecary. I'm going to start incorporating that.
I just love the girl's name, Quanta. What a
name. He has his priorities straight. That's a good
Quanta from the apothecary. I love it.
So thank you, guys. Thank you to our listeners as well. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
We'll do it again. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.